You should have your green sentence writing strategy booklet in front of you. We're going to start lesson 3 today, which starts on page 3, but we're going to go through a review of all the different terms and strategies and mnemonics that we've been introduced to through the sentence writing strategy. One of the things that makes this effective is that if you start using and getting this questioning in your head and through the patterns, it'll be a lot easier as we go along. So we really do want this to become part of a routine. So we first establish, why are we learning this? Well, first of all, it's going to help you write better, which is going to help people understand you when you write. We think of all the places in the world where you have to communicate as you get older, job applications, emails. Someday you're going to be the manager and writing memos and directions for people underneath you. And last of all, because the state of Ohio says that in 7th grade, you've got to learn how to write appropriately. So we're going to start with a complete sentence. What does it need to have? Starts with a capital letter, ends with a period, has a subject, has a verb, and it has to make sense. And we're doing some of this practice as we're going through our vocabulary sentences as well. If you don't have, the symbol that we used for a capital letter is 3 underlines. Here are 3 types of end punctuation: period, question mark, and an exclamation point. We label the subject with a capital S, and we underline our verb and then label whether it's action, linking, or helping, and that's what this lesson is going to focus on today. And if your sentence doesn't make sense, and this is the code that we use to let you know that DMS doesn't make sense. So a simple sentence, what does it have to have? One independent clause. Well, to know what an independent clause is, we have to go back and think about, well, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words with at least one subject and at least one verb. There are 2 different kinds of clauses, dependent and independent. We're talking about a simple sentence. It has an independent clause. So it has a subject and a verb, and it's a complete thought that can stand all by itself. It makes sense without any help. The subject is who or what the sentence is about. And we know that those nouns and pronouns names people, places, things, qualities, and ideas. If you have a subject, you got to have a verb. And the verb shows what the subject is doing, or if it's a linking verb, it's a state of being. So it's an action if it shows what someone's doing. We called it a linking verb if it's on the list of words that we had to memorize, and also if it links a word in the predicate after the linking verb back to describe the subject. And today we're going to talk about helping verbs. An action verb shows what the subject is doing. We have physical actions like walking and running. And then we have mental actions like thinking and wanting something. Linking verbs are words that link the subject to a predicate noun or a predicate adjective. So if we said, the man is the subject, is the linking verb, strong goes back and describes that subject. The man is plastic. Okay, goes back and describes that man. All right, so you had to memorize your linking verbs. If you did not, there will be an opportunity for you to come back and do a retest on these, but for now you're going to focus on your helping verbs. Take what you know. You didn't do well on your linking verbs quiz, then you want to put a little bit of extra time into it so you can start learning your helping verbs and bring your grade up. At some point, though, you will have an opportunity if you didn't do well on your linking verbs to retake it. So their first 8 are the linking, the just state of being: am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. And then we had 5 that go with the 5 senses: look, smell, feel, sound, and taste. And we do have to be careful with these. See is a verb that describes one of the 5 senses, but it's not a linking verb. So you got to make sure that you memorize these 5. And then we have 5 that go with the mnemonic: grabs, grow, remain, appear, become, and seem. And just like any verb, these can all be put in past tense. And again, to make them linking, something is going to come after the verb that goes back and renames the subject. She grew tired. I remain short. The word and the predicate goes back and describes the subject. And so we had a mnemonic where we searched and checked to make sure our sentences were complete, and we used the mnemonic MARK. Mark out the imposters. Those are prepositional phrases and infinitives. Ask, is there an action linking or helping verb, and label it. Root out the subject. To root something out is to search through. So we're going to search through that sentence to find the subject and ask who or what does this action. And then we're going to key in on the beginning. That's making sure we have a capital letter, a period, or a question mark, or an exclamation point, and that it makes sense. Okay, and so when we talked about these infinitives, actually, I'll do the review. The prepositional phrase first tells where or when an action happens. They start with a preposition, and we're going to get ready to memorize these after we get done with our helping verbs. These show locations: about, above the table, around the corner, under the table. And they end with a noun or a pronoun. And one thing you'll never see in the middle or anywhere near it is a verb. Because if you have a verb, then it's not a prepositional phrase, it's doing something else. And then we have these things called infinitives. Infinitives are tricky because they have two words, the word to in front of a verb. To paint, to like, to be, to slowly eat is your verb. Now these can be tricky because to can also be a preposition. And so we have to think about these. I think of them as formulas. To plus a verb is an infinitive. To with a noun is a prepositional phrase. Okay, and so we have to be careful with to. It's a special preposition because it can also be used as an infinitive. So today, the new information you're going to start taking notes on are about a verb phrase. So you should be at page 3 right now. A verb phrase is a main verb that works with one or more helping verbs. So main and helping are the two words that you need to fill in here. Your main verb is the one we always focus on. Is it action or linking? And it's always going to be the very last word in the verb phrase. The helping verb, just like its name, it helps. It helps it along, helps that main verb along. Jake is running. Jake will be running later. If we look at the verb phrase here, running is the main verb, but if I just said Jake running, that doesn't sound like it makes sense because I have this suffix at the end. I need a helping verb. It changes the meaning of running just a little bit by putting that suffix at the end. Jake is running. Here the meaning changes a little bit later, or different. It changes it to future tense. Oops. Sorry, I was jumping ahead here. So when we underline our verb phrase, we label the action verb, the main verb. Is it action or linking? And all the verbs in front of this action or linking verb, we're going to label as helping verbs. And to be a helping verb, they have to be on that list of words that you're working on memorizing for your quiz next Tuesday. After we find the verb, we ask who is running. Jake is running, so Jake is our subject. In this sentence, Jake will be running later. Again, Jake running by itself doesn't give us much meaning, and it doesn't make sense the way it's written. Jake will be running puts it into some context. When? In the future. So our main verb is the last verb in the verb phrase, running. We label it as action verb, and all the verbs in front of it are helping verbs. And when we look at our list, am, is, are, was, were, will, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, can, shall, will, may, might, must, could, should, would, has, have, had. We've got helping verbs that go in front of the main verb. Who will be running? Jake will be running. So that becomes our subject. So again, helping verbs help that main verb. And here they are. When we think about grouping them in some way, am and are all begin with an A. Be, being, been begin with a B. Is, was, and were, all of these red circled ones are also linking verbs. They're the same verb that we memorized for our first list. We have to think about them differently now, though. If they're in front of another verb, they're helping verbs. If they're by themselves, linking something back to the subject, they're linking verbs. So you can go Google this on YouTube. It's just a good little trick song if you want to, if you're a musical person and memorizing things to music helps you, then you can go Google the helping verb song, and that can be something that you can use as a tool to help you with your quiz next Tuesday. For our purposes, I'm going to show you a different mnemonic. When we do mnemonics, we take the first letter of something and we make a word out of it or a sentence. So you'll see the capital letters here are going to be the letters we're going to use to find our helping verbs. Chad B. Swim is 23 years old. The C in Chad is can and could. H, has, have, had. Am, are. Do, does, did. Be, being, been. Shall, should. Was, were, will, would. We only have one I, that's is. And may, might, must. So we have Chad B. Swim is 23 because there are